I again. In John Wesley Bready, This Freedom Whence, page 150, in the chapter Preaching Social Righteousness. Bready has been denouncing the War of Independence, war in general, and now he takes up the abuse and use, proper use, of money and privilege. "The church," cried St. Bernard in the 12th century, as he gazed at the wonders of Gothic architecture, "is resplendent in her walls, beggarly in her poor. She clothes her stones in gold and leaves her sons naked." That's the end of the quote by St. Bernard. Wesley, 6 centuries later, was to protest in terms equally vehement against the extravagances of wealth. And that protest he formulated into a definite doctrine concerning the use and abuse of money and privilege. "The acquisition of knowledge," taught Lord Bacon, "was for the glory of the Creator and the relief of man's estate." Just so taught Wesley regarding the gaining of money and the use of all financial power. "The earth is the Lord's, and the fullness thereof," was the center of his economic faith. Thus the cardinal articles of his financial creed were the divine proprietorship of all wealth, property, and privilege, and the stewardship of man. All talents, of whatever nature, were to Wesley a trust from God. "Occupy till I come," was God's commission to man. The Christian use of wealth, therefore, postulated a spiritualized and socialized will. The delusion of irresponsible ownership represented the crassest idolatry. Avarice and cupidity were soul-killing sins, while as for parasitic wealth, it carried its own fearful nemesis, a death-dealing sting. To Wesley, therefore, any antithesis between business and religion was unthinkable. For him, the vital question was not, should religion interfere with business, but how can business avoid going to the devil if it is not permeated with religious values and dedicated to religious ends? Riches, taught this modern prophet, were made for man, not man for riches. Economic ambition, he believed, a good servant, but an accursed master. The acid test of all commercial life was the query, to what purpose do the wheels go round? And unless they moved for the common good, they obviously were out of gear. All snatching to hoard, and hoarding to snatch, Wesley considered utter insanity. No more than sex appetites should acquisitive economic appetites be stimulated or pampered. Rather should they be curbed and sublimated to social and spiritual ends. The injunction in Proverbs, "Give me neither riches nor poverty, but enough for my subsistence," was to Wesley a law of reason. Men who strove to corner the fruits of the earth were not only robbing God, but grinding the face of the poor. They were ravenous wolves whom any decently ordered society should hold by the ears till they learned neighborliness. No department of life, Wesley insisted, dare be surrendered to the powers of darkness. The remedy for bad law was good law, not lawlessness. But the foundation of all good law he believed to be the socialized conscience and the changed heart. Luther's utterances on social morality, says Professor Tawney, are the occasional explosions of a capricious volcano with only a rare flash of light amid the torrent of smoke and flame, and it is idle to scan them for a coherent and consistent doctrine. Wesley refers to Luther's writings on salvation by faith as muddy and confused. The leader of the Second Reformation was too systematic by nature and too logical by training to fall into Luther's error. Whatever were Wesley's shortcomings, system and coherence were at the center of his life and teaching. His warm, stout heart was directed by a cool, reflective head. Though Wesley was always suspicious of accumulated fortunes, and though commonly he avoided the rich, yet he was too practical to underrate the value of money, if controlled by a humane, sensitive conscience for the common good. In his sermon, "The Good Steward," he speaks of that precious talent which contains all the rest, money. Indeed, he pronounces it unspeakably precious if we are wise and faithful stewards of it. But always he proclaimed wealth an inevitable curse if it became an end in itself, or a means of self-aggrandizement. In what manner, he asks, didst thou employ that comprehensive talent money? Not in gratifying the desire of the flesh, the desire of the eye, or the pride of life, not squandering it away in vain expenses, the same as throwing it into the sea, not hoarding it up to leave one behind one, the same as burying it in the earth, but in the first, supplying thine own reasonable wants, together with those of thy family, then restoring the remainder to God through the poor. Industry and thrift he demanded of all his disciples as indispensable marks of Christianity. But the purpose of these must be service to God and man, not vainglorious indulgence. Wast thou accordingly a general benefactor of mankind, he asks? Didst thou labor to improve all outward works of mercy and means of saving souls from death? If so, it remains that thou be rewarded to all eternity according to thy works. But if contrariwise we forget that God is creator and proprietor of all, and fail to use the wealth entrusted to us as stewards of his kingdom, we are certain to become entangled in the meshes of sin and lose whatever lingering faith remains in our souls. Wesley's injunctions in this regard are emphatic and unmistakable. Give all you can, hoard nothing. I defy all the men upon the earth, yea, all the angels in heaven, to find any other way of extracting the poison from riches. Any who squander or hoard wealth for self-gratification, Wesley taught, are robbing God, continually embezzling and wasting their Lord's goods, and by that very means corrupting their own souls. Nay, worse, in so doing we are keeping money from the poor to buy poison for ourselves. That this needs to be heard and reheard in these days of a gospel that calls itself even the prosperity gospel. We'll put a link into a video we did from Ray Franz's book, where Ray Franz recounts the building of the Watchtower's charitable business empire by Nathan Knorr, the third president of the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society.